Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashtin Doctor, your habit coach, and today with me I have Swati Pandey, who's the owner of Magic Leaf Stevia. It's a brand that I use, and I've known her before she started this brand when she said that we are trying to do something in the stevia space. This was, I think, 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was so excited by this because that was when I was just learning about stevia and I was exploring it, and I was like, why aren't there so many companies doing this right now? I want to know more about this kind of a natural sweetener. So that's when this whole thought came. And right now we're going through multiple no sugar challenges, and different people are doing this from my Instagram. So I thought this would be a fantastic time to understand what is sugar alternatives, and what is the confusion that exists between everything. So firstly, Swati, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashton, for having me.
We've been meaning to do this for a really long time. It's just that
Yes, we
you've
are.
never been in Bombay at the same time to come to the studio, and now,
Yeah,
you know, Zoom is allowing us to do all these things. It's fantastic.
true.
We keep putting out content like this on this channel, so please don't forget to hit subscribe and the little bell icon so you know when future videos come out.
So, Swati, tell us a little bit quickly about what is it that you do and the company before we dive in straight into the topic.
Right. So the last 5 years of our lives has been only about stevia. So we've been, thinking, eating, drinking stevia. That is the only thing that we've been working on, just one particular product, which is stevia. And we do everything end to end. So if you're aware, stevia actually comes from a plant.
Okay.
So we do everything from actually cultivating the plant in collaboration with farmers to then extracting the sweet compounds in the form of a white powder that you get in the market to actually formulating products like Magic Leaf Stevia.
Okay.
So the initial 2 years of our work really revolved around identifying the right plant variety of stevia. So initially we realized that some people were cultivating stevia, but it was quite scattered, and the variety that they were growing had very low content of the sweet compound. So we realized that if we had to get into this industry and get into the processing bit and the extraction bit, the content was going to be very important, when it comes to the economics of extraction.
Correct.
So we really started from scratch and worked on the plant variety itself. And the plant variety that we have today is about 3 to 5 times higher yielding than any other variety being grown in India.
Superb.
And then we
But why
process
this
it
whole
using
stevia thing? Why did you decide on stevia as something to dedicate the rest of your life for?
right. So that's actually a very personal reason. My mother has been a diabetic for the last 25 years, and I've seen her struggle. She's been a severe diabetic, and I've seen her struggle. She has been, consuming other sugar-free alternatives, and she's, one of those people who just can't quit sweets.
Yes.
So the best thing for a diabetic would probably be to just quit sugar, right, and carbohydrates as much as they can. But for her, I mean, it is a struggle, right? She's just not able to quit sweets, and somehow it makes her feel that she's kind of missing out on the celebrations, and when everybody's sharing or eating something, if she can't have it, then she kind of feels bad. So I just felt like a product like this could actually impact the lives of many people like her. So that was the motivation. And then, of course, this is a product that's not just limited to something that diabetics consume. This is for everyone, right? Even for children, which is something very unique about stevia, because
really?
because most of the alternative sweeteners in the market, they're not safe for children and pregnant women and certain people with certain medical conditions. But stevia is safe for everyone. So if you are a child, if you are a pregnant woman, if you are on a diet, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're a diabetic, anyone can have it. So I just felt that from an impact perspective, this product had a huge potential, and not just in India, but globally. This is an issue that we're seeing globally right now.
Super. So when people get off sugar, correct? They want to say that I want to stop having sugar now, but they can't give up the sweet tooth, just like your mom.
Yeah.
What are the kinds of alternative sweeteners that exist in the market? I just want you to guide us through this, almost make it a masterclass, saying these are these kinds, these are these kinds, these are these kinds, because
Right.
there's so much confusion around them.
Right. So if you're trying to quit sugar and if you're trying to quit calories, then your best option is to go for 0 calorie alternatives. And there, the leading products in the market contain primarily aspartame and sucralose. So these are the two, compounds that are almost present in every, sugar-free product out there. But both of these are chemically synthesized. Unfortunately, there are products available in the market. I'm not sure if I can name them, but they are actually being marketed as Natura. And, a lot of people think that they are natural, including myself. I mean, I used to think, and that's the reason that I recommended, that to my mother a few years ago, thinking that it was natural, but actually it's based on sucralose. Which is again artificially synthesized, and the industry is now having been working in this industry for a few years. I'm now seeing that how much manipulation is actually there. You're making something else and then you're just manipulating the wording and the messaging to actually call it something else. And even for people in the industry, I mean, for us, sometimes it takes time to understand what they're exactly doing and how are they calling a product maltodextrin, which is a high GI, sugar. So one is artificial sweetener, aspartame and sucralose. They are both artificial and they have long-term side effects.
What kind of side effects? What happens?
So aspartame is, so there are some studies that say that aspartame is even carcinogenic. And it basically never gets flushed out of your system. So once you consume it, it keeps accumulating in your body and it never leaves it. Sucralose, on the other hand, is again artificial and it impacts your gut bacteria. And now we are realizing how important gut bacteria is. I mean, it's a vast area of research and we have only started to kind of understand it. So there is now increasing scientific evidence. I mean, there are a lot of scientific research papers. If you do your research, you'll find it. There is a lot of evidence that, now connects the usage of these products with a lot of side effects. In fact, there was a study, I think in Sweden, where they were also exploring the impact of these, the production of these sweeteners on the environment, actually. So, so the discharge, that comes out of these industries, when that gets washed out in the rivers, it actually has a negative impact on the flora and fauna there as well. So that's the artificial sweetener bit. Then you have what is called sugar alcohols, right? So you have erythritol, you have maltitol, sorbitol, xylitol, right? So these are all not sugars.
Alls that are there, correct? Anything with a tol is one of these sugar alcohols.
Sugar alcohol. So they are not sugar, but they are sugar alcohols essentially. Some of these are natural though. So for example, erythritol actually exists in nature. So it exists in a lot of fruits and vegetables, and then we extract them. A lot of companies are also actually synthesizing the same compound artificially now. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to mimic something that's already existing in nature through an artificial process. So that also happens.
This is different from sucralose, which doesn't exist anywhere in nature.
Exactly, yes. Both sucralose and aspartame
doesn't exist anywhere in nature, but a few of these alcohol sugars exist in nature, and we are now trying to mimic what nature has created, correct?
Exactly, yeah. So sucralose and aspartame are completely man-made. I mean, they have been invented by humans. But polyols, a lot of these sugar alcohols actually exist in nature. But the thing is that they all have different properties, right? So for example, erythritol is a slightly milder version of the polyols, which means that you can actually, consume them in, a decent quantity without having any negative impact on your health. While other polyols like xylitol and sorbitol, they actually they impact your, gut health as well. So a lot of people actually complain that when they have erythritol or other polyols, they, they feel that they get bloating and, other issues, which is more, predominant and significant when you consume other polyols as compared to erythritol. So with all these polyols, there is actually a recommended limit, per kg of your body weight. And you can, if you have that, within the suggested limit, then it's fine. Otherwise, it causes bloating and gas and diarrhea in some cases and all those issues.
Correct.
Having said that, it's also important to understand that some of the sugar alcohols like maltitol, they are not entirely 0 calories. So they do get, metabolized in our body and lead to some calories. Not the same as sugar, less than sugar, but they do have some calories.
Right.
So that's the polyol. The third interesting thing that I've been seeing is this trend around jaggery and brown sugar and coconut sugar. So all these things are also sugar, right? So they have calories. And if you are a diabetic and if you're really trying to watch calories, then they are not healthy for you also. The logic that people give is that with brown sugar or with jaggery, you're getting a lot of other minerals, irons and everything, which is true given the quantity of sugar we consume these days, but they also have calories. And also with coconut sugar, also the same logic people give is that you get a lot of other beneficial minerals and stuff, but there is no evidence if that is even significant to have a positive impact on your health. So yeah, broadly that's the landscape right now. And the natural sweeteners, I mean, you have primarily two options. One is stevia and the other one is monk fruit. So the third option for a 0 calorie alternative is the natural sweeteners, and primarily they are either stevia based or monk fruit based, right? So they are both they both come from natural source. They are both 0 calorie. But the issue has been the taste, for both of them, both monk fruit and stevia. If you consume the pure compounds, that are responsible for the sweetness in these two, products, stevia side and the monk sides, they both have a lingering, a slight aftertaste and a lingering. And that has been the reason why it has taken so much time for people to kind of accept it. Right? Otherwise, I mean, it makes sense, right? It's a natural sweetener, just like sugar, and it's 0 calories. So why wouldn't people consume it, right? But it was really around the taste, and a lot of people who tried to consume it earlier in the form of the leaf or even the extract, they didn't like the taste and hence decided to not, incorporate it in their lives.
Correct.
But with scientific advancements and improvements in technology, it is now possible to actually make great tasting products using stevia or monk fruit. The issue with monk fruit is that it actually comes from a fruit which is primarily available and grown in China, and they have a GI patent on it, which means that you can't really take out the tree out of China and grow it elsewhere on a large scale.
Oh, really? You can't grow it anywhere?
Yeah, so they have a what is called a GI, the geographical patent, right? Geographical IP on it. So you can't freely, take it out of or import it from China and start growing it elsewhere. Also, it's a tree, so it takes longer for it to mature and then give the fruits and everything. While stevia is a small plant, you can cultivate it, and within 6 months you get your first crop. So that way, in terms of scalability, it's much easier. So yeah, these are the options. Apart from this, some companies, including ourselves, we have also incorporated fructose in our product. Fructose is also called levulose. Fructose, like everybody knows, it's a natural sugar. It's a fruit sugar. It's present in a lot of fruits, and we consume it almost on a daily basis. The good thing with fructose is that it's low GI. It has the same number of calories as sugar, but it's low GI. So it gets metabolized in our body much slowly, which means that it doesn't lead to a spike in our blood sugar level if consumed in moderate quantities. So that way it's safer. One important thing when talking about sweeteners and thinking about calories is that not all calories are the same, right? Which has been, I think, the cause of most of these misconceptions. So we are always just calculating and watching calories. But that's not the right approach, because not all calories are the same. They are not treated by our body in the same way. So the complex carbohydrates actually get metabolized in a very different way than, say, glucose or sugar. So that is what is important to understand here.
You know, the important thing, more than, for example, calories, when I look at these sweeteners or any sugar for that matter, is the impact that it has on my insulin, right? So how do these kinds of sugars, artificial sweeteners, impact insulin? There are lots of studies that are going around saying that even if you do eat a little bit, the sweetness also impacts insulin. It might put rise in insulin, even though there are no calories in it. Have you read up any of these studies? Do you know a little bit about them?
Yeah, so there are some studies, that have been done on aspartame and sucralose that say that even if they are 0 calories, they kind of, trick your body into thinking that you have consumed sugar, and hence they cause an insulin response. But to be honest, there isn't much scientific evidence to support that. There are just a few studies, and I don't think they are substantial enough to claim something like that. Of course, if you have any other product, like any other sugar that has calories that gets metabolized in your body, or that requires insulin to break down that sugar, then that will cause an insulin response. And that is what is again unique about stevia, that it really has 0 glycemic index and 0 calories, which means that it causes absolutely no insulin because it doesn't get metabolized in our body at all.
Okay. So what is it about stevia that is different from sugar? Is it using a different sweetness pathway? How is it affecting the tongue? Like, how do we get that sweetness from stevia different from sweetness of sugar?
Right. So chemically, it's a different structure altogether. It's a different compound. It belongs to a class of compound called glycosides. And the glycosides are naturally present in a lot of products. It's present in fenugreek. It's present in artemisia, a lot of medicinal plants, a lot of food products, vegetables that we consume. So this particular glycoside tastes sweet, but the structure is such that it doesn't get metabolized, it doesn't breaks once it's consumed, by a human body.
So basically, when we eat it, it remains the same till we excrete it.
Yes, absolutely.
So it just has a chemical reaction on the tongue, and that's it as it goes down.
So that's what we know as of now. There is also some anecdotal evidence that when you consume, the stereosides, or when you consume, say, the leaf itself directly, it has a lot of other, medicinal properties as well. So it helps reduce your blood pressure. It also has, immunomodulating properties. It helps build your immunity. And there is some evidence that it also actually helps reduce, your blood sugar level. Not just keep it at the same level, being a sweetener, but also reduces it. And a lot of people actually feel that way. A lot of consumers feel that way, that, ever since I've started consuming it, I've started noticing this. But we don't have enough clinical data to actually consume that. And we don't yet understand how exactly that's working, because it's not getting metabolized in the body. But then why is it still having that impact? So this is something that we have been working on, and we have actually been talking to AIIMS to actually get proper clinical studies done and collect all that data that we can then share with our consumers. But because of COVID, obviously that's a higher priority right now. So that got delayed a bit.
Correct. Absolutely. Understood. So now let's jump into stevia. So when people say, what is stevia? How would you go about telling somebody who's never heard of what stevia is about stevia? Like, what is the origins? Why are we using it? Should we be using it? Should we not be using it? So how would you go about that?
So stevia is actually the name of a plant, right? And the leaves of this plant are extremely sweet in taste, and they have no calories. Now, the source of the sweetness in these leaves is a class of compound called stevial glycosides. And it's actually a mixture of different kinds of glycosides that kind of give a different taste and different properties to the leaf. And that is the reason that if you consume leaf coming from different sources, grown in different regions, it will taste different. Because it's just like any other natural product, like tea or coffee, right? Depending on where it was grown, how it was grown, when it was harvested, all those things, have an impact.
Which is why different products taste so different when you look at stevia.
Exactly. Because it's not just one single compound like sucrose. It's actually a collection of about 38 to 40 different glycosides in the mix. And they all have a different, property and a different taste.
Yeah.
So what the composition of this mix, that how much of it is stevioside, how much of it is riboside, how much of it is other glycosides will decide the taste. And that is the reason that depending on what technology have you used to actually extract these compounds from the leaf, as well as how you have kind of blended this with other bulking agents, they all have an impact. And that's why, products from different brands can have like huge difference when it comes to taste and other properties.
Correct. So now I have a leaf. How does it become this powder that I put into my tea?
Right. So this is a process that, again, we have developed indigenously. It's a proprietary process that we have developed. Most of the extract, in fact, 95% of the extract that you get in the market today globally is coming from China, and it has been extracted using the exact same technology, which is resin-based. And it's actually quite polluting. It's a very long 19-step process, and they, do a lot of, processing at every step and use a lot of chemicals to actually get to that white, shiny powder level. So when we got into this business, we felt that, what is the point of doing this, right? When you're taking something as natural as stevia, and then if you have to process it so much, then that kind of, beats the whole purpose of it being natural. So we went back to the drawing board again, and we said that, okay, let's see if there's a better way of doing it. So we developed a new technology, which is completely water-based. So what we do is we take this leaf, we steep it in water. So what water does is it takes out all the sweet compounds present in the leaf, along with the pigments and other things present in the leaf. And then we purify it using an electrochemical method to remove the pigments and make it colorless. And then we basically crystallize the compounds from this mixture. So that's how we do it.
So you remove the pigmentation that takes place. And then after that, so there is water that you get, which is probably very, very sweet, correct?
Yeah.
Which has the compounds in it. I'm not technical, so I don't know how this works.
So it's like if you put like any plant, right, or tulsi.
That'll be fine.
I
said you can tell me this is proprietary. Can't tell you. I'll have to kill you after this. No problem.
Right. Sure.
So you have this water.
Yeah.
Now, how does this turn into the powder? Like you were saying, are there various aspects to it? How does water turn into powder?
Sorry to disturb, but please ask the question again. You broke up quite a few times.
No problem. I'll ask it again. Yeah. So Swati, I'm not a chemical student, so I have no idea how this works. But what I understand is there is water, right? This water has to then turn into this powder. How does that process happen? Normally when people say it's processed, chemicals, and that's the main reason why people stay away from sweeteners. So how does it work in this? And if there is something very proprietary that you cannot tell me and that you'll have to kill me after that, please don't tell me about it. But how does it work for people?
Sure. So essentially what we do is we take the leaf, and you could actually do this at home as well. You can take the dry leaf or the wet leaf directly from the plant and put it in hot water for some time. So all the glycosides present in the leaf that are actually sweet, they are soluble in water. So they all get transferred from the leaf to the water. So now when you filter it out, you will now get a very dark green colored liquid. So it has all the glycosides, but it also has the chlorophyll and the other compounds present in the leaf. Find a way to now remove all those, because the final product that we have in the form of powder, it's up to 97 or 99% glycosides. That's it. And there's nothing else in it. So the idea is to basically in this process, remove everything else but glycosides. So the way we do it is, most of the companies actually use a lot of chemicals to, coagulate the impurities and the chlorophyll and the pigments. We don't use any of those chemicals. We use a simple electrochemical method. So what this method does is it actually removes all the color and the pigments and everything. And now what you have is a very light yellow colored liquid. And then we get the sweet compound, we concentrate this, and then we get the sweet compounds crystallized out of this mixture. That's essentially what we do.
So by evaporating the water, it crystallizes in a sense.
It crystallizes, and then to purify it further, like I said, to get it to 97 and 99% level, we have to recrystallize it a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Okay. And then, so now I have this powder. What happens to it then? Is this ready for consumption?
No. So this is a very high intensity sweetener, right? So it's about 200 to 300 times sweeter than sugar, which means that, I mean, you could consume it directly as well. But if you wanted to consume it, imagine, having to measure 20 milligrams of this powder precisely to put into your coffee every day.
Correct. Yeah.
And, and this is a very relevant question, and I'm glad you asked this, because a lot of people actually think that, stevia companies are cheating them because they are, mixing a lot of other bulking agents, and it's not pure stevia. There's actually a reason why we have to do it, right? Because otherwise it becomes impossible for a normal consumer to use it. You would otherwise have to keep like a high precision measuring scale in your kitchen and measure like 20 milligrams every single time you make something. Or do those calculations like how much you need and then measure it. And also the error that gets induced, during the measurement has a huge impact on the taste. So if instead of 20 milligrams, if you happen to measure say 30 milligrams, it would have a huge impact on the taste. And now your product will be like too sweet and you would not like it. So to make it easier for people to consume, we have to bulk it up with something that's again healthy. And that's also one thing where, brands differ significantly. So what is it that has been used to bulk up the stevia powder? So we actually, as a company, we, stand by being natural in everything. So even the bulking agents that we use in our product are natural. And we took a call to actually use fructose, and a lot of people, asked that why fructose, because it's also a sugar. But we decided to use it because...
Correct. I asked this question a long time ago as well to you.
Yes. So we decided to use it because, the dosage that you have, you only take like 1 gram or 2 gram per serving. And out of that, like 0.8% is fructose. And even if that has calories, it's low GI, and it really has no impact on your blood sugar level. So that is the reason we decided to go for fructose, because it's natural and it's low GI and it's healthy. And then we, mix a lot of other fibers that are again good for your gut health. We also use erythritol. Again, we decided to use a mixture of erythritol and fructose because we wanted to keep erythritol to the minimum, so that, even if people happen to consume, have like a couple of servings or like 4 or 5 servings in a day, it shouldn't have any negative impact. But a lot of companies, and this is so strange, and this is where I was talking about the manipulation that's there in the food industry. A lot of people, and this is actually standard, a lot of companies in the stevia space, not just in India, but globally, very well-known brands, using, maltodextrin as a bulking agent. And it's a high GI sugar. It has a GI glycemic index of 100, which is even higher than sugar. So it's the same as glucose. So if you consume a lot of it, it's definitely not safe for a diabetic. So they give the argument that, you're consuming just 1 gram per serving. But if you happen to, say, have like 4 cups of coffee and you use like 8 grams there, then it can have an impact on your blood sugar level. So a lot of, manipulation is happening there. Maltodextrin is one. Then people use dextrose as well, which is just another name of glucose. So people use dextrose. They basically mix stevia and dextrose, which I don't know why they do it. It really makes no sense. And they use isomalt and a lot of other, artificial sweeteners to improve the taste as well as give it the bulk. And they are also very cheap. So that's also important to understand.
According to you, when you pick up a stevia packet,
yeah.
Sorry, according to you, when you pick up a stevia packet and you look at the ingredients, what are the ones that you should definitely look out for and say, oh, I'm not going to consume it because it has these 3, 4, 5 things in it?
Right. So you definitely should look at the list of ingredients, right? And apart from stevia glycosides, most of the brands actually should, disclose what they're using. So if you see something like maltodextrin, dextrose, isomalt mentioned there, then I wouldn't recommend using it. But I don't blame the consumers as well, because these really are products that are not very mainstream, and even for somebody in the industry, I mean, even I took some time to actually get used to these terms, right, and understand what they mean and what they do to your body. So I would really recommend read up a little bit and get yourself familiar with all these terms if you have the time. But yeah, definitely do read the label. If you see dextrose there, then definitely a no. I mean, it makes no sense to have dextrose with stevia.
Correct. Absolutely. Okay, fantastic. Swati, is there anything else that you want to talk about stevia per se right now? Because the next podcast that we're going to do together is about your journey and how you started this company, because I'm sure the listeners can already see the passion in you for this. So I want them to experience that as well and know what all you'll have to go through to do this, because I've been part of this journey. I've been hearing about it for a while, and that's why something I wanted to definitely share with everyone. It's inspiring for sure.
Sure. Yeah, so one last thing on stevia, and we actually see this and we hear this a lot from our consumers, right? That people take it, consume it, and then they say that, it doesn't taste like sugar. I can tell that, it's sweet, but it's different than sugar. So you need to understand that it is different from sugar, because it is not sugar, right? So it's just like, your honey or coconut sugar or, maple syrup. They all have a different flavor, a different kind of sweetness. And that's what stevia has as well. I mean, it's a different flavor. It's a different kind of sweetness, and it might take some time to get used to. So don't expect it to taste exactly like sugar. As a company, I mean, we are trying our best to actually develop products that can mimic sugar, not just in terms of taste, but also properties, so that you can use it in, cooking and baking and everything. But please do give that benefit of doubt to stevia, because it is not sugar. So it's not fair to actually, expect it to behave exactly like sugar.
Absolutely. And, I keep telling people, nothing will taste as good as sugar. Okay. And that is just that unfortunate reality. Whenever you go down this whole path of I'm giving up sugar, I'm quitting sugar, etc., nothing is ever going to taste as good as sugar. So you need to get over that fact and say, all right, now how do I train my taste buds for something else? And that's what this whole process is about. So, when we start off with moving from sugar to something else, it's a process and it's a journey. And I keep telling people that, when you give up sugar cold turkey, you start missing that sweet element. So definitely start at this point of time using sweeteners to understand this. Later on, if you want to become cleaner and not use anything, for sure, be that. But at least when you're making a choice, start making a better choice as you're growing along. And that's what happened to me. I remember when I did my first no sugar challenge, I was using every sweetener brand out there, because I had never heard about this whole thing about gut bacteria having a problem or anything about it being carcinogenic. So I was dabake having it. Then I said, oh, maybe there's a better way of doing it. And I remember buying stevia leaves for the first time and using it. And I was like, oh my God, this tastes horrible. How is anybody ever using it? Correct? And then you're like, all right. And then we finally got stevia powder, and you said, okay, let me see if I can start making this work. You start off with a very little. And guys, start off with a very little amount. Don't do too much, because it will end up tasting too bitter and might overpower you. So start small and then start increasing even when you start on consuming stevia. It's not the same amount as sugar.
Yeah, and one tip on usage I would give is that try using it in things like, say, milkshakes or your halwa or kheer and sevai and all those things. Because the thing is that when we come across a sweetener, the first thing we do is we put it in our tea and coffee. Now the thing is that tea and coffee is something that we consume every single day, and everybody is just so used to a particular taste that even a slight change, is palatable, and you can feel that, oh, it's not the same coffee anymore, right? It's not the same thing I'm used to drinking every day. So that change seems significant, right? So I think a good way to start with is, try it in your smoothies and shakes and everything. It goes extremely well. There, you will literally not feel like, it's stevia. You will feel like it is actually sugar. And then move to, your tea and coffee.
Lovely. So then start with something that is unfamiliar, then move slowly to the familiar. Allow your taste buds to change along the way.
Yeah.
Correct? Superb. Swati, how can people get in touch with you? How should people order from you? What should they do if they're interested in stevia? What should they do?
Yeah, so we have launched our B2C product called Magic Leaf Stevia in December last year. And we are selling on Amazon, we are on Flipkart, we are also selling on our own website called magicleafstevia.com. If you want to reach out to me, if you have any other questions, please feel free to write to me. You can contact me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. You can also contact me on social media, Instagram, or you can write to me on email, which is swati@arborealstevia.com.
Okay. And what's your Instagram handle?
That's Swati_arboreal. I know that's very boring, but easy to find.
All right. Superb. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Swati, for joining us. This was a fantastic podcast. It was like a master class in understanding stevia and sweeteners. I'm sure people have taken away a lot of learnings from this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And I hope it was helpful.
My pleasure. Okay, cool. I think that's good. And I think we've managed to lose Hariharan, who was in charge of the recording.
Yeah, he just joined again.
Are you back?
My internet just
Okay, so do you think it was recorded?
Yeah, it is recording to the cloud. So even if I'm here or not, it will keep on recording.
Oh, it's recording to the cloud. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, great. So now we have about another 15-20 minutes. Swati, let's do on your journey about starting the stevia brand. Basically talk about how many different trials that you had to do. What is the story behind it? How you all managed to go around? Maybe talk about little funding if you want. How as an entrepreneur? So now you're not wearing the stevia hat. Now you're wearing entrepreneur hat.
Right. Sure. Okay.
All right.
So my journey from the beginning. So I am an engineer.
No, wait. I have to introduce you.
Okay.
This is like a new podcast altogether. So some people might only hear this without hearing the first one. Some people might hear the first one and come to
this. Okay. Got it.
Yes, I'll do my introduction and everything again. All right. Whenever you're ready, Tali bajao.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashtin Doctor, your habit coach. And today with me, I have Swati Pandey from Magic Leaf Stevia. And if you missed the first podcast, please go make sure you listen to it, where we talk about stevia, what are the kinds of sweeteners that are available in the market, how should you move away from sugar to some of these sweeteners. And today we're going to be focusing on Swati, not as a stevia geek, but as an entrepreneur, because even her story as an entrepreneur is fascinating. And I want to share this with you because I know it will spark some idea in your mind. I know it will spark something that makes you probably want to do something like this, a journey of your own. So without further ado, Swati, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast again.
Thank you, Ashton. Pleasure.
Awesome. So Swati, tell us a little bit about yourself and how this amazing journey of the last 5 years started.
Right. It started about 5.5 years ago. 2015 is when I decided to do this full time. But of course, like any other idea, I mean, it has been there in my mind, lingering somewhere, for quite some time. By background, I'm an engineer, like a lot of Indians. I went to IIT Dhanbad. I'm a mechanical engineer. And then I went for my
Do you like engineering?
I did actually. I have been a nerd, and I used to love physics, and that is the reason that I chose to actually do engineering. So I did enjoy it.
I asked this
Um,
because I get so many questions from people and they tell me that they're doing engineering. I always ask them, do you like engineering? And about 75% say, no, not really. I don't know what to do with myself. So I think, that like if you're being an engineer, understand that it might not be that path that you might choose. It might be something else that you might completely land
yeah.
up doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have been a geek and I like science. I love science. So I did enjoy it. But obviously, I'm now working in a completely different field. But one thing that engineering really does to you is that it makes you a fast learner, is what I've seen. That you have your basics right, and then you can pretty much learn anything if you want and if you put your mind to it, right? So I started out as an engineer. I went to London, did MSc from Imperial College London. I was also a Commonwealth scholar, worked in London in the venture capital space, worked in India as well in venture capital. And then went to Singapore. I was in Singapore for about 2 years working with a consulting firm. And in 2015, I decided to quit my job and I came back to India full time to basically work on this business. So that's the long and short of it. That's how it happened. But like I said, that the idea had been there for some time before I jumped into it full time, and that happened when I was still studying at Imperial. So before that, like I said, that I love science. I was probably planning to go for a PhD after my master's, and get into research somewhere. But I happened to join a summer school organized by the European Union, where they actually selected some students from all around Europe and they took them on a journey across Europe. So we went to different countries in Europe and spent some time with entrepreneurs, professors, and got a sense of what was happening, in the entrepreneurial world in Europe. And that was
Was
kind
that
of my
inspiring?
first. It was. I mean, that was my first exposure to the business world and entrepreneurial world, and that made me think that that this was also a path that I could consider and I could choose, because I've always been somebody who is driven by making an impact. So I wouldn't do something just for the sake of making money, but making meaning and being able to impact the world and the people is something that has that drives me. And I realized that being an entrepreneur, that impact could be actually multiplied and amplified many folds. As compared to being a researcher and maybe work on something and just publish papers and thesis.
Correct. Correct.
So that was kind of, a turning point in my life.
And I love it. So you
that,
took entrepreneurship and turned it into impact. You said that I don't want to just think business, I want to think impact. And that was
yes,
the
absolutely.
transition. All right, lovely.
Yeah. So that has always been the case. I mean, I really wouldn't do anything that's just about making money unless it's doing something, unless it's having an impact on somebody's life or the environment or, someone in some way. So that's how it started. And during that summer school, I mean, we came up with this name also called Arboreal. It was an initial team of 5 people, and we were working on a social business idea where we were thinking that how can we help farmers, make more money or capture a higher, margin from the supply chains of various products, especially the non-commodity products, say, things like aloe vera, things like, say, neem oil and all those things. So it started like a social business, and we worked on it. We won a couple of international business competitions, got some funding as well. But then we were all students at that point. I was an MSc student. 2 of my team members were PhD students. So we all went in kind of different directions, and the team disbanded. But when I came back to India after graduating, I worked with a venture capital fund in Ahmedabad. So it was housed at CIIE, and it's called Infuse Venture. So it was India's first sustainable energy focused venture capital fund at that time. And again, I mean, I think it was all serendipity that I again got into an environment where I was talking to a lot of entrepreneurs on a daily basis. And that kind of reignited that, entrepreneurial bug,
Yes.
in me again. And I felt like maybe this is not the end and we should explore it further. So I started talking to people in the industry, and the business kind of evolved from being a pure play social business to a more commercial business with a strong social angle. And when we thought of doing that, I mean, we felt that, okay, why just focus on a lot of different kinds of non-commodity crops? Let's just identify one thing that has a global potential and a global market. And that's how we came across stevia. And stevia ticked a lot of boxes, right? It is a natural product. So the raw material was going to come from the farmer. So there was a potential to make an impact on the farmers' lives. This was a product that was going to have a very positive impact on the consumers' lives as well, the diabetics, the Weight Watchers, people with obesity. And it had a lot of scope for innovation. So being an engineer, I didn't want to, do something that was already there. I didn't want to do a Me Too venture, that this is a business model, we know it works somewhere else, and then just take it and, port it to a different setting and then do it. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, a lot of people do it, but being an engineer, being a geek, I didn't want to do it. And as we studied, stevia more and more, we realized that there was still a lot of scope for innovation. So people ask us that, stevia has been around for quite some time. So what is new, right? I mean, it has been there. But the thing is that stevia has come a long way. And in the last 4-5 years, ever since we started the business, things have changed a lot. There is still, in fact, I would say it's still a very nascent industry.
Correct.
There's still a lot of scope for innovation in terms of improvement of taste, improvement in terms of extraction efficiency, and all those things. So it ticked all the right boxes, and I just decided that this was it. So yeah, and then decided to quit my job and came back.
Lovely. You're so right, because it takes the geeky part of trying new, processes of producing stevia. It takes the part about people don't know really what stevia is, because I keep getting so many messages saying, what do you think about stevia? What is stevia? Correct?
Yeah.
And I think it is a growing path and you've chosen the perfect plant, I think, to focus on, especially in today's day and age, when everybody is talking about, moving away from sugar, moving away from those alternatives, healthier lives. So fantastic.
Right.
Kudos. So now you decided saying, chalo, stevia. What happened next?
Yeah. Right. So, and I would say that I've been very lucky to actually find the right team to do this with. So my co-founder Manish, he's also an engineer with Spilani, and he went to London Business School. Then he worked with a hedge fund, a top tier hedge fund in London for about 5 years. He was on a very fast growth path in his career, and he was making really good money. And he had that kind of a career path that most people really dream of.
Yes.
And I somehow managed to convince him to quit his job as well. And he came back to India to become a farmer, essentially. Because at that time, we were focusing on agri. I mean, that was the starting point. Because if we were not able to figure that part out, then there was no point in getting into the extraction, because there was no supply chain for raw material. Even if we had put up a factory, how do you even run it without the raw material? So initial 2-3 years were literally just about farming and agri. And I have to give it to Manish that he left his lucrative career, came back to India and stood on the farms, became a farmer himself. He was new to farming as well. So we made a lot of mistakes initially. But I think that commitment was there. And we've been at it for the last 5 years. And so apart from him, then we...
So why did you have to start from the farming process directly? Sorry, I'll ask that again.
So like I said, right, so when you take the leaf and you extract the sweet compounds from it, right, the percentage of that sweet compound present in the leaf is very critical for your economics, right? The leaves that were being grown in India had very low content of the sweet compound. So if we just took that and we asked farmers to just grow the same variety. And if we took that and we tried to do extraction using it, the economics wouldn't have worked. We would never be able to compete with the Chinese, suppliers. And we knew that this was going to be a global game, and we will have to compete on the prices. So that's why we realized that, you have to, work with the variety. That is really the starting point. And so we did multiple agronomic trials in different, states of India. We did Tamil Nadu, Jharkhand, everywhere. We imported a lot of different varieties from different parts of the world, did a lot of trials, a lot of R&D, and then managed to actually identify the right variety, which is very high yielding. And currently the variety that we are growing, it has very high percentage of sweet compounds. So even if you taste the leaf directly, you will feel the difference. It's the intensity is much higher.
Do you have like stevia tasters, like you have tea tasters and coffee tasters? Are there stevia tasters also?
Well, we have become stevia tasters ourselves.
Okay.
I don't think that there's anyone trained on stevia that way. But yeah, the way we do it is we get a lot of people and try to increase that pool, for feedback. So we get it tasted by a lot of people, take their feedback, and then kind of take the average. So there's a method of actually getting that.
This might be a stupid question, but like how tea grown in different parts tastes different, and you can get different flavors from it. You can get a chocolate flavor from it. You can get a light rose flavor from some teas. Does the same thing happen with stevia? Can you also get naturally different tasting stevias, or do they all just taste sweet in different compositions?
No, absolutely. It will taste different. The flavor profile will be different, and an easy way to understand this is this, right? That, like I said, stevia is not just one single molecule, right? So when I say stevia, I'm not talking about one particular glycoside or one particular compound, right? I'm talking about a collection of different glycosides. And this comprises of primarily 2-3 main glycosides, and the remaining are in very small quantities. So say there is stevioside, there is rhabdosiide A, there is rhabdosiide B. If I gave all these compounds to you in 100% pure form, they would taste different. So now when you combine them together, the relative composition of these different compounds are going to decide the taste, right? And depending on where it was grown, how it was grown, in fact, when it was harvested also, just like tea. If you harvest it when it's over mature, or when you harvest it when it's under mature, the taste is going to differ as well, because the glycoside content changes. So absolutely, just like tea, where you are sourcing it from has a huge impact. And that is the reason that we only work with our own variety. So we don't procure other varieties, and we work with farmers. We give them our plant, our germplasm, and we only purchase that.
So are you ever going to then have variants saying late harvest, early harvest, pick during monsoon, pick during this kind of a, like how tea has grown into from white tea to early harvest tea to high altitude tea?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
something like that.
Yeah, I think that point may come depending on how the adoption of the leaf directly goes, right? I hear a lot of feedback from customers who actually love the leaf. So they use it directly in their tea or coffee, and they love it. And so it's just like, some people develop a taste for it. And I think if that adoption happens, and again, we understand that it's kind of a new product, so it's going to take time. But I think it can happen that people will get used to stevia just the way it is, just like they've gotten used to tea or coffee, right? And they'll start consuming it directly, and they'll get familiar with the taste.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay. You all became farmers. That is where we left off the story at. So now you all are in the fields, you all are hal chalawing, and what happens?
Yeah. So so we did all those trials, and we managed to identify a variety that was very high yielding. And in parallel, and then we had to find a model that worked for the farmers, because we didn't want to do the farming part ourselves. The problem with India is that land holding sizes here are very, very small. So we didn't want to get into the farming part because it's not that you could just get 1,000-acre farm here and then just, mechanize it totally and do it yourself. So we wanted to leave the farming part to the farmers. So we had to, come up with a model that worked for the farmers as well. And basically a win-win model, right? Economics that worked for us and something that motivated farmers to actually move to a new crop. And that took quite some time because this was a new crop. Farmers hadn't done it before. The farmers have been conned by so many people, in the past, especially in the medicinal plant space. So they are very careful and they're very skeptical when, you approach them with a new proposition. So what we had to do was we had to set up the farms ourselves first.
Oh, wow.
And we had to turn farmers. So we set up literally demonstration farms that we could then show to these farmers, and we could take them there and show them that this is how it is done. And slowly we build that trust. And by doing the cultivation, so if you just search on YouTube, right, you would find a lot of videos where people talk about, oh, you can make like 9 lakhs in profit from stevia, in 1 year from 1 acre. That's not true. I mean, we have done farming ourselves, and we have, validated all those numbers, the economics and how it works, how much output do you get, and how much profit will you get, how much cost goes into it. So when we talk to the farmers, we tell them the real numbers that no, you're not going to get 3,000 kilograms. I mean, the realistic number is probably around 1,500 or so. So we had to do a lot of that work. And in parallel, we were developing this extraction technology as well. So for that, we were lucky to actually get some very senior scientists, on board, who came with that, extraction and biochemistry background. So that really helped as well. And I still remember the first extract that we produced in the lab. It was really like a moment of achievement, and we have that picture as well with the boil where we have the first extract.
Wow.
So we did that. And so this is an ongoing work. I mean, we are continuously trying to improve the extraction process and the efficiencies. And then the third part was the formulations. We realized that, so Arboreal essentially is a B2B company, and we work with a lot of other businesses. We realized that most people that we spoke to, most of these food and beverage businesses, making, say, shakes or snacks or chocolates or, a whole lot of different things, there was a good chance that they had heard of stevia before, that they had even used stevia before. But in most cases, the opinion was that stevia doesn't work. Again, I mean, because of its taste, it doesn't work well in, cookies or in certain applications. So we realized that making stevia was not enough. Making stevia work was more important. And that is why we set up an application center. So we have a team of food technologists, and their only job is to make stevia work in different applications. So we make different blends for different kinds of applications. We have done chocolates, we have done milkshakes, tabletop sweetener is there, of course, tea, coffee, whole lot of different applications. And even with Magic Leaf Stevia, I mean, based on our customers' feedback, we are continuously improving the formulation. And that is, I think, one advantage we have being a manufacturer, as well as having our R&D in-house. So we do everything in-house, end to end. Nothing is outsourced.
Superb. And what I love about your story is that it started off as an idea, as a dream, creating impact. And then as you started progressing, you started saying, oh no, this is not going to work. You have to try and figure out something else. Oh no, this is not going to work. You're going to try and figure out something else. And I want everyone to understand that this is a process that you have to get on. We just see the end result. People will order your stevia at the end of the day, and then it'll sit on the table and we'll say, oh wow, so nice they made this. But I want people to understand that it is a step-by-step process. It is a step of learnings every single time, saying, oh no, it's not so simple. You can't just grow stevia and then make it. Fine, now we need to get farmers together. Oh, now that we've got farmers together, the quality is not good. Okay, now we need to figure out how do we improve the quality of these products. And I love the way that this iteration has gone on. In your highs and lows, how did you deal with it?
Right. So there really have been a lot of highs and lows. Even in the initial days, I think when we were, trying to develop this proprietary variety, there were instances when we were like on the verge of losing hope that this is probably not possible, right? Even before I got into this industry, I remember speaking to some industry veterans, from the herbal industry space, and they clearly told me that don't try doing this. This is not possible, right? The Chinese are way ahead of us. You will never be able to compete with them. All those things happened, but I guess it is really again the impact, that drives me, and I think that is why it's important that you have a bigger purpose, associated with the business. Otherwise, it's just too easy to lose hope. Yeah, but if you have like a bigger vision, a bigger purpose, then that kind of, drives you.
I completely agree with you. If you're starting this for pure money, yeah, sure, start it. But when times are hard and you lose money, you're going to feel there's no point. So you have to.
Yeah, and you can always feel like if you're doing it for money, you are always like evaluating other opportunities as well, right? That this is not working well, but maybe there's something else, that will help me, get to that level faster, and I'll be able to make more money, in that period. And if I look at it, I mean, it's been 5 years, right? And we actually launched our first B2C product after 5 years, which is very unusual in the startup world, right? I mean, in startups, you launch fast and you fail fast. But with us, I mean, we were really doing that fundamental R&D, and that is why it took us so long.
Correct, absolutely. The gestation period was just so long in the process of creating this product. Lovely. And now, what do you see the future? What are interesting things that you all are working on that you're very excited about?
Right. So Magic Leaf Stevia is actually getting a very good response, and especially during the COVID, we've really seen a surge in demand. It seems people have become a lot more conscious about their health. The entire conversation about, thinking about your health, doing, something for your health, and not just take it for granted. I think that has become a thought that, a lot of people are now adopting. And so that's one bit that has really picked up beyond our expectations. So while, COVID has had obviously a negative impact, and, a lot of other a lot of our other plans kind of got off track because of that. But then, a lot of new opportunities also arose. And this was kind of a validation that this is a product that people want and need. So we've been supplying to, all around India. And initially we were thinking that, this is going to be a premium product, and this is going to be probably a niche product. And just like most of our customers will be in tier 1, towns, maybe Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, is what we're looking at initially.
In fact, your packing is so fancy. Right, I remember the first time I got your pack, and it's a glass bottle, and then you had a little note along with it, and it was so cool. And I was like, definitely trying to target tier 1, but you were just telling me like tier 2, and everybody else is getting on board.
Yeah, and not just tier 2. I mean, we are getting orders from villages, right? I mean, these are places where it's difficult for us to find the PIN code. I mean, these people don't even know the PIN code. And usually, and in some cases, the addresses are given like, is gali ke piche or wo mandir ke bagal mein, like that. So, but it's really heartening to see that, but it's really heartening to see the kind of demand we are seeing. We have delivered products in Andaman and Nicobar, Nagaland, Chhattisgarh, places that we haven't even, heard of. So we realized that this is okay, that this product is not just for tier 1. It's actually a pan-India product. And this is a product that, people need and want. And people have been asking, ki kahan milega, kidhar milega? And, a lot of, interestingly, a lot of Hindi-speaking, audience. So we literally had to hire like telecallers who could call them and explain and help them, make an order. So some of these people are not very, well versed with actually operating online or going to a website, making an account, making a payment. So they usually just leave the number, and then our team calls them and explains the whole thing. And if they are convinced, then they place an order.
Nice.
So it's been a great journey. It's been kind of a discovery for us that, that what we've created is it has a bigger potential than maybe what we thought.
Superb. Right now, you guys have a normal stevia. You'll have a keto stevia, and hopefully, you will come out with lots more variants. I'm very excited
Yeah,
about
so
that.
we are coming up with liquid drop.
Okay.
We are coming up with a flavored liquid drop because we realized that people in India, you know,
I was
especially
just
their
going to
chai,
suggest that.
people, yeah,
Yeah.
especially their chai, people drink with, you know, ginger and mint as well. So we will be coming up with some flavored versions as well.
Hmm.
And there are a couple of other products as well in the pipeline.
Nice. When is the liquid one coming out? I want that liquid one.
So that the formulation has been finalized. We have done the taste trials and everything. We're currently finalizing the packaging and the vendors and everything.
Send testing to me also. I'll
Hopefully
give you
soon.
feedback.
Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. Hopefully by the end of this month, we should have it in the market.
Superb. Perfect. So anything else you want to say before I do closing remarks? Covered everything?
That's it. I guess it's been a really long but rewarding journey. And like I said, that, you know, if we were doing it just for money, I mean, there were probably a lot of other opportunities where we could make the equal amount or maybe more money, you know, especially because of the background that, you know, both of us, me and Manish, came from. But it is really the purpose and, you know, what we are trying to do here that keeps us, you know, going. So, yeah.
Superb. I think it's a completely inspiring story. I hope lots of people hear this and choose to start something of their own, choose to do something, follow in these footsteps, understand that there's a commercial part to it, but you can also have a social part to it. You can create that social impact. You can start creating change in people's lives. And that is, I think, the best way of understanding entrepreneurship and moving forward from there. Thank you so much, Swati, for coming on the Habit Coach podcast and having this conversation with me. Where can people reach out to you? How can people order from you? What should they do?
Thank you so much, Ashton, for having me. Loved having this discussion. I'm actually quite active on LinkedIn, so people can reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. I'm on Swati_Arboreal. And they can write to me on my email as well, which is swati@arborealstevia.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Thanks, guys, for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.